So recently, Automobilista 2 had their new update, which in my opinion was very good. And I talked about it a lot in my previous video, but a lot of people, mainly people from other sims, but also quite a few people in the forum, Racer forum, have stated that these cars maybe slip a bit too much and feel a bit too drifty, or what you want to call it, slidey, arcade, something weird. So today I'm going to experiment and see if there are certain settings and differences which make it so these cars feel more slippery, and then in the end we will actually try and verify if they slip too much or not enough. So let's jump into Automobilista 2 and set the baseline using the default settings I use every day. So we will be driving the AMG GT3 Evo around Spa. And that's a bit why, because it likes to slide a little bit more. And so in my base settings I use extra, I increase the noise of the tires. I also use custom FFB, and I fix the camera to the car. So that's just for you to get a reference of what my settings are. And then we will go through a few things. So let me just focus. So for the starters, or for starters, or how you say it, we have cold tires as a thought about why the cars slide around more. And you can already see my tires are maybe not fully green and haven't been the whole lap, and they like to slide a bit. So that's just adding towards that fear that maybe you should wait until the tires heat up. And that's also a comment I've gotten in my video on Le Mans Ultimate when talking about feeling that I should wait until the tires heat up so I get optimum grip. And you can also see my throttle and brake traces or inputs to see how I use my throttle and brake. And this is nothing to like an excuse for sliding more, but just a side note about this experiment that I really like using the throttle to rotate the car. So that didn't work out so well with there, but I generally like to do it because I don't know really why, but I believe it's because of my rally driving from WRC. So already you can see I'm going quite a lot quicker. So let's just push this lap and see if these hot tires actually slide less. So you can still see the GT3 because they do have a limit when going at high speeds. Yeah, the tires definitely feel like they slide less when hot. And that's in general what you want to feel. But I believe this the tire noise definitely helps creating a placebo effect, because I feel like I'm not sliding really, but then I'm just turning the steering wheel maybe a bit too much, and that's what making it so the noise happens. I wonder if it's connected to what you see as grip loss on my dashboard, because that's some shared memory settings showing how the tire grip, it loses grip, and then I believe in just every situation that's what happens with the audio, that they just say, oh, tire grip loss equals audio noise of tire slip, even though it's not really maybe drifting or making or supposed to make that noise. So that's an interesting thing to just think about. So if we just go out of this corner. So it slides a little bit. Not too much though, in my opinion. So if we see there, I could do a better lap. And I felt like it was clipping quite a bit less with the setup. So now let's try the first thing on my list, which is the loud tire noise. So what you want to do is go to, well, first we can restart the session. So I start that there. And then what you want to do is go to audio here. And then tire volume. You can see going down to 0 because it's the tire volume of tire sounds when sliding, locking, and spinning. So it's quite a jam-packed setting. But now, with 0, let's see if we can get maybe a different opinion. Okay, so the tire slides there. But what's interesting now is we're going with the ABS and traction control noise. Or maybe there's not so much ABS noise, but traction control there definitely is. But I have what you want to call them, vibration motors in the pedals, which then obviously give vibrations. So if there is ABS active or traction control active, I can feel it in my feet. And that helps quite a lot with pedal inputs. So now we just brake. So I definitely feel like the car feels like it slides less because it's having less noise, but that could obviously just be a placebo. But it becomes a lot more enjoyable with lower tire noise. And I feel like that through like the no-name corner, I feel like going through there, I wasn't really listening for a tire screech, so I wasn't anticipating a spin, which made it so I could push harder through there. And then through there too. I'm going a lot more with feeling and less about audio, which is an interesting point to think about. And there I lost it. But you could see my delta was positive and I felt like I could really push the car a bit more. But that's just a placebo effect, which we have already discussed. That audio definitely isn't helping. And that's really interesting that it's definitely not helping. I will just say that I'm going to speak truthfully, and I don't care if Razor think I'm spouting nonsense. I'm just spouting my opinion, and my opinion is that audio noise definitely isn't helping for the sliding business. So now with hot tires, let's now push and see how quickly I can go. How quick of a lap time. So if I just push the car harder. Yeah, so through there, yeah, it definitely feels like I can push a bit harder. Which is very interesting. But like that's what I've been saying quite a lot. I feel like the car definitely doesn't feel like it's sliding around so much. So I'm already 1.5 seconds up on my delta. Quite impressive. I felt like I could hear, like, through that high speed corner, I don't know the name, but I felt like I could slightly hear the tires stretching. I feel like that could also be me just being weird, but I felt like I could hear. So if we just listen, maybe through this high speed corner, and see if we can actually hear anything. I feel like there's slight notes of the surface audio, like producing something. So that's very weird. So here, I did a 217.7, which was very good. So I would say lowering the audio settings to 0 for the tires is a very good change. But now let's check wrong camera settings. So I've asked in this forum, in the AMS2 discussion server, comment link down below, about like different things which might be showing more slip. And one thing, this wrong camera settings, I was a bit interested about, and it's all to do with this setting. I've heard that not labeling it will make the car seem more slidey. But it's also worth looking at other camera settings, which could be these, like how much it moves. But if we remove legacy head movement, just keep the head movement at 0 again, and let's just see if the car feels more or less slidey. So already I don't like how the camera just moves around me. That was me just being optimistic through there. So far I feel like legacy head movement hasn't done so much, but we have to see. So far I feel like this non-legacy head movement just makes you understand how bumpy a track is. I feel like legacy head movement makes it so cars feel less slidey, because the vehicle doesn't fully, the camera doesn't fully move with the vehicle, which makes it feel like you're less slidey because your eyes are just focused forwards, if that makes sense. I don't know what it is, but it feels like I'm pushing the throttle a lot more. Maybe there's a thing about making the car feels more stable. I'm not so sure, because I'm trying to drive the same with all of these, but then slight differences changed my driving. Like removing the tire noise made me push through that tight, slow downhill slow right-hander. Also with these, it feels like I'm going on throttle a lot more. But there is something which makes it... I feel like my throttle inputs... I've become more optimistic on my throttle with removing this setting. Which is an interesting point. Or I should say observation. Definitely feels like I'm pushing a lot more. And there I lost the rear. So yeah, definitely that's very weird. I promise you I'm not doing anything intentional to try and make the car slide less. But there is definitely that hint of me maybe feeling like the car is more planted using these settings. So that could be an interesting observation, that maybe the people driving without legacy head movement think a car has a lot more grip than it has, so they push their inputs a lot more, which makes it so the car slides more, and then they think the car slides a lot. That could be an interesting observation. Obviously comment down below what you think. But now we're going to move on to wrong FFB settings, so I will just switch to default with the same settings I use to feel that. But before, I want to talk about just two different settings which are two different options which are regarding something else. So we just switch to default here. So what I have written here is the bad default setups, which they say should be less of a problem by now. And I feel like the setups in the default setups in Automobilista 2 are quite good when you think about what they are for. And this is like it's not like in ACC where it's just the default setup for each circuit and they have 3 different setups. This one is a proper default setup to use for this car in all situations on all tracks. So if you're driving, let's say, Interlagos during a during a thunderstorm, it should be very good there, while simultaneously being very good at Spa during the summer when it's super hot. So that's, if you imagine that wide spectrum which the car needs to be good at, they understand why the setups are like they are. Obviously, there are a few philosophies in these setups which maybe a few people disagree with, but in general, I find them not too bad. And they have the throttle in AMS2 behaves differently. Some say more accurate than other seems. I personally can't say anything, but I have heard exactly that I don't remember if Niels Husingveld said it. If he's watching, he can just comment down below. I don't know. But I feel like I heard it from Niels or someone else or both. I'm not sure, but there was something I read which said like the GT3s, that the GT3s and other throttle curves behave more realistically in Automobilista 2 than other sims. I personally can't say if that's correct or not, because I'm no expert on all of those things. I'm no expert on vehicle dynamics of things. I'm just trying to figure out these things through the perspective of an average person who doesn't have a vehicle dynamics degree. So now after discussing those things, let's jump into Automobilista 2 and try the last setting, which is just me driving on default. I normally use a file by Karsten called R-Factor, and instead of an A, it's with a U. I'm not saying it differently because it sounds a lot like a rude word. So let's just drive and see how it feels. Oh, and maybe we should turn off legacy head movement. No, turn on legacy head movement just to get a same perspective as the other tests. So I've heard mixed reviews about the default settings. I personally switched because I felt like there wasn't that information which I wanted. It was something about like the rear not having enough feed. No, okay, through just driving through it felt like the rear had too much feedback. So that could be why I switched. I don't fully remember, I just remember I switched. So far, it feels like the car move. Yeah, that's also another thing, that the cars with default FFP feel a bit more sluggish. So that's an interesting thing too. So yeah, default FFP definitely makes it so the cars feel slidier than they are. So yeah, there's also that resistance. But I feel like there's a pendulum effect which quickly develops when just turning the steering wheel on a straight, which is interesting. So definitely it feels like the cars slide around a bit more using legacy head movement compared to not. But I feel like you get a better perspective with the legacy head movement compared to not having it, because you know better what the car is doing. So yeah, definitely. It feels like I have to correct the car a lot more using the default FFB, which I really don't like. Because it feels like I have to correct a lot when maybe in reality I don't really have to correct as much. So yeah, the car feels a bit slidey when driving here, using the default setup. Definitely feels like the car is more lively. But what I'm also interested in is seeing what this fastest lap is that they took, but if it's compared to my session best or if it's compared to my actual best lap time. Like through there, it felt a bit like a snap when turning. So I am going quicker than my previous, than my best lap time, but not by so much. So the car feels very strange. And I broke too late. But so in general, yeah, with default FFB, the car feels more lively and it feels like you need to correct a lot more, which could make it the car feel like it's sliding a lot more than it actually is. Which I feel like is the consensus. A lot of settings makes the car feels like it slides more, and a lot feel like it slides less. So now let's check the data and see if the car slide more using certain settings or if they slide less. Okay, so this is the data, but before we have a detailed look at that, I'm just going to show you what I've read is the optimum for a GT3 car. So first, we are in here in the Assetto Corsa, they read it, and there it says you don't want major slides where you're losing control or where you're basically drifting, but ideal grip is achieved at a certain slip angle. If I recall correctly, for the GT3 test, that's around 6 to 10 degrees. And if we check this website, it says most racing tires at the maximum lateral G often achieve up to 7 to 8 degrees of slip angle. Dirt tires used in rally or speedway are designed to allow greater slip angle, sometimes achieving a 40-degree slip angle. So now, if we have a look at the data, you can see here, this was the first lap with my default settings. You could see here that in the first corner, I achieved 8 degrees of slip. And then in the other ones, I normally achieved like around 5. In a few closer to 6. So if we just have a look at where that is on the circuit, we can see here that it's in this corner where I achieve these like 5-6 degrees. And here where I reach 7 is when I am here. So through the middle speed corners. So according to these calculations, which I found on the internet, I will just show that the maths is the velocity x, which is in some weird reason in AMS2 is the lateral velocity, and divided by ground speed, which is the one going forwards. So I divided them and also to put them in arc cos. And then it gave me in radians, so I changed it to degrees, and then it gave me these 90s. So then what I did was, since it was based on 90, I just took the absolute value of the slip minus 90, so the minimum is 0. So you can see here that the slip is actually, yeah, it's within the limits from checking the internet. If we just have a look here, because this says 7 to 8, this says 6 to 10. So in reality, maybe through these corners, I'm not fully optimizing the slip. So now let's have a look at the other laps. So this was the one without any tire noise, which felt like I could push a lot further, and was also the quickest lap time I did, I believe. So if we have a look here, you can see that the slip is actually a bit less in the first corner and through the chicane on at the end, but otherwise it's roughly the same heights through the other spots, not through here though, where I think I had a little moment, but otherwise it's roughly the same, or maybe a bit higher for this. So it's a lot, what you want to call it, the maximum slip angles are a bit the same through everywhere. which is quite interesting about it. But so it's still in the limit of what's actually apparently realistic, even though maybe sometimes it's not slipping as much. So now let's jump to the lap where I changed to turned off legacy head movement. And you can see here, I believe if we just turn off that, I have to, okay. Now that's an issue. If we just switch to there like that. So you can see here that the white is the best lap, and you can see that I do slip a lot less through the first corner, but then roughly the same. But through the middle speed corners, I'm pushing a lot more, and you can see here that I'm definitely pushing maybe a bit too much through here. So that's also very interesting. They seems like also through here I'm sliding a bit more. So I could say the slip is a tad too much through the medium speeds when driving, but not too much. And I still have very good grip. So now we switch to where it's just changed the FFB. And you can see here the slip seems to be roughly the same, even though the FFB changed. So what does this say about Automobilista 2 and what settings should you use? Well, on the settings part, I would use legacy head movement because you feel you can sense what the car is doing visually a lot better than these other than the other settings. I would not use the default FFB because it makes the car feel like it's slipping more than it actually does. So I would have a look at custom FFB files which are on the Racer forum. Then otherwise, obviously, cold tires make the car slower. And we actually forgot to check that. We didn't check cold tires. So if we just compare the, if we jump to the quickest lap time, which was this one, without any tire noise, and then compared it to the cold lap, you can see, yeah, it's definitely not, it's slipping more, but generally it feels like when you're pushing harder, it feels like it is slipping more. So if we have a look at the summary through here with, no wait, where is track inputs? You can see here that I am on the throttle a bit more through there, I believe. Or wait, no, but yes, you can. So cold tires make it so you start that slip more earlier, and it also increases a lot more. But you can still control the slip if you obviously go a bit slower. And then if we just jump back to here, so the settings I would say is, again, legacy head movement on. Use custom FFB. I don't care whatever file you use, just maybe not one which exaggerates the slip. I recommend Karstens, but other good ones are Cuckoo's and Daniel cards. I believe there are some other ones like full FFB. I haven't tried it though. Or I did actually try it, but it's for Moza wheels, which seem to not have a peak FFB. Peaky FFB like Fanatec. And I also tried the Atmos FFB, but that's not been updated, and I feel like it's quite good, but yeah, I wouldn't want to use it because there's no support of it. And then does Automobilista 2 slide a lot? I would say it has a lot of slip, not sliding really. But is it an unreasonable amount? No. In a few corners, for me at least, I'm not slipping enough, and in others I'm slipping the correct amount, or maybe a little bit too much. So what do you think about this data gathering and interesting video? Comment down below, and whilst you're down there, please hit the like button and also subscribe. My next video, we'll have to see, no, I actually know what it's on, because we tried these with sliding and stuff to see how good they are. Next video, next week, I am going to see if I've heard there are some meta setups out there using some weird unrealistic settings in Automobilista 2. I've gotten some help with doing some what do you want to call it? Some studying on those and some research in seeing if they actually handle better. I will have to have a look, and I will also make a video on that topic to see what the meta setup is or seems to be, what causes this, and also maybe how Razer can help mitigate the issue using the things I know are a bit of an issue. So comment and hit the bell if you want to hear me talk about that. But until then, I've been Racing Legend, you've been my amazing viewers. Thank you for watching. Goodbye!